They kicked me out of Thanksgiving dinner. The words still sting, but the truth is even sharper. While my family believed I was a burden, I was quietly the one paying for their blessings. My name is Charlotte Hayes. I am 32 years old, a single mother, and the founder of a cybersecurity company valued at $58 million. None of them knew. Not the father who dismissed my choices. Not the mother who constantly compared me. Not the siblings who lived off luxuries they could never afford without the mysterious family trust. That trust? It was me. I had wired them thousands of dollars every month for years. $5,000 to my parents, $3,000 each to my brother and sister. They used my money for vacations in Italy, kitchen renovations, and new cars that gleamed in the driveway. And still, they looked at me across that table as if I was the failure. I can see it clearly. The chandelier glittering above the polished mahogany. The scent of rosemary turkey in the air. Lily, my 4-year-old daughter, sitting beside me in her velvet dress, proud to meet her grandparents. And then the glass tipped, water spilled across the lace cloth. My father's hand slammed the table. His face turned red. He shouted about $1,000 tablecloth as if my child had ruined his entire legacy. Lily's lip trembled. Her little hands shook. My instinct was immediate. I pulled her close, my palm steady on her shoulder. That was when I realized. It was not about the water. It was about power. My father wanted to remind me, and everyone at that table, who he thought I was the disappointment, the mistake, the child who never measured up. But something shifted inside me. For decades I had stayed quiet, swallowing the bitterness of comparisons. Why aren't you more like your sister? Why can't you be strong like your brother? That night, with Lily's tears soaking my sweater, I could no longer remain silent. The irony was cruel. They prayed over dinner about blessings, about prosperity, about how the Wilson family was thriving. They had no idea every blessing on that table had been purchased with the money I earned. The chandeliers, the marble counters, the imported wine, none of it came from their success. It came from mine. But here is the part that will surprise you. I never wanted their gratitude. I wanted something far simpler. I wanted them to see me, to believe I was more than the quiet, overlooked girl from Connecticut. Instead, my father stood, his voice thundering, accusing me of ruining my life, of raising my daughter without a father, of clinging to a fantasy business that surely could not be real. He had no idea he was tearing down the very person who had been holding him up all along. That night broke me, but it also freed me. I walked out of that house knowing that approval was a prison I had lived in too long. And this is where my story begins, not in the warmth of acceptance, but in the cold November air, clutching my daughter's hand, finally ready to choose dignity over desperation. Because what led me to that dinner table was not one night of anger. It was a lifetime of being overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed. And the only way to understand the strength it took to stand up is to go back to where it all began. The slam of my father's hand on the table was still ringing in my ears as I lay awake that night. But to really understand why it cut so deep, I need to take you back to the beginning, to the house where I learned what it meant to be invisible. I grew up in a Connecticut suburb, the kind of place where lawns were trimmed perfectly, and neighbors waved at each other every evening. From the outside, we looked like the perfect family. Inside those walls, though, there was a hierarchy carved into stone. My father was a respected bank manager, my mother an elementary school teacher. My older brother Patrick was the firstborn son who could do no wrong. My sister Stephanie was the golden girl, praised for her beauty and charisma. And then there was me, the quiet, bookish youngest who never seemed to fit their mold. Why can't you be more like Stephanie? My mother would sigh when I chose reading over parties. Patrick never gives us this kind of trouble. My father would mutter if I questioned his decisions. These comments came so often that they began to feel like a soundtrack to my life. I was not rebellious. I was not careless. I was simply overlooked, dismissed as though my achievements could never weigh enough to tip the scale against theirs. But what they didn't know was that every comparison lit a fire inside me. While Patrick practiced football and Stephanie perfected her smile, I stayed up late with textbooks under the glow of a desk lamp. I studied not just for grades but for proof that I mattered, proof that one day they would see me. When my SAT scores arrived, nearly perfect, I thought I had finally earned that moment. I can still see myself at the dinner table, heart pounding as I slid the envelope across. For a second I waited for applause, maybe even a smile of pride. Instead, my father barely looked up from his plate. "That's nice," he said flatly. "But college isn't everything. Patrick's already making connections in the real world." My brother had just started working at a car dealership, and somehow, that impressed them more than my scholarship to Stanford. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the paper with my score clutched to my chest. I realized something life-changing. Their approval was not guaranteed. No matter how high I climbed, they would always find a way to shrink my victories. Still, when Stanford sent me the acceptance letter, offering a full scholarship, I knew I had found my escape. Leaving Connecticut was not just about education, it was about survival. I remember the morning I left for California. My suitcase was battered and barely zipped shut. My father shook my hand as if I were a business associate. My mother kissed my cheek distractedly, reminding me not to embarrass the family. Patrick smirked. Stephanie barely looked up from her phone. And then the taxi pulled away, taking me further from the only world I had known. As the houses blurred past the window, I pressed my forehead to the glass and whispered to myself, "One day, you will see me. One day, you will know what I can do." That promise carried me through the loneliness of campus, the pressure of lecture halls, and the gnawing homesickness that threatened to break me. I pushed harder than I ever thought possible, because I refused to stay the shadow they believed me to be. Looking back, I understand something I could not at 16. Sometimes the people closest to you will never recognize your worth, not because you lack it, but because it unsettles the story they have built about themselves. My family needed Patrick to be the success, Stephanie to be the star, and me to be the one left in the background. If I stepped out of that role, their fragile balance shattered. But shadows do not stay shadows forever. And before I tell you how Stanford opened the door to a world that would one day become a $58 million empire, let me pause here. If you are still with me, drop a comment below, and tell me where you are watching from. And if you want to follow this journey to the very end, make sure you hit subscribe. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. Because what happened in California was the start of everything. The first time I set foot on Stanford's campus, I felt like I had stepped into another universe. Towering palm trees lined the walkways, students hurried past with laptops tucked under their arms, and everything buzzed with the energy of possibility. For the first time, I wasn't the forgotten youngest. I was simply a student, one who had fought her way there, and wasn't about to waste it. But let me tell you, escaping Connecticut didn't mean I escaped the voices in my head. Every late night, when exhaustion blurred my vision, I still heard my father's words. "Patrick is already making connections." I still heard my mother's sigh. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Those echoes didn't vanish. They fueled me. At Stanford, I discovered something unexpected. I wasn't just good at studying. I was obsessed with building. I joined every startup club I could find. I stayed after class grilling professors about real-world applications, and by my junior year, I had designed a prototype for a cybersecurity software that could detect system breaches before they happened. The day I pitched it to a room full of venture capitalists, my hands shook so badly I thought I might drop the clicker. But when I walked out of that room, I had secured $50,000 in seed money. My first real investment. I called home, excitement bursting in my chest, ready to finally make them proud. "Mom, Dad, you won't believe this. Investors gave me $50,000 to develop my project." There was silence. Then my mother sighed. "Honey, wouldn't it be better to focus on a stable job after graduation? All this startup talk sounds risky." Risky. That was the word she chose. Not congratulations. Not we're proud of you. Just risky. That night I cried alone in my dorm room, but by morning, I made a decision. If my family couldn't believe in me, then I would believe in myself, twice as hard. After graduation, my classmates slipped easily into corporate jobs with neat salaries and predictable hours. I did the opposite. I poured every penny, every ounce of energy, into my company. I named it Secure Nova. For 2 years, I lived on instant noodles and caffeine. I worked 18-hour days hunched over a second-hand desk in a tiny apartment where the walls shook every time a bus rattled by. There were nights I stared at my dwindling bank account and wondered if I was insane. I even swallowed my pride once and called my parents for a small loan. My father eventually sent $1,000, but not before lecturing me about financial responsibility, reminding me to pay him back as if I were a stranger asking for credit. He called every week afterward, demanding updates on repayment. Each call was a reminder. In his eyes, I wasn't a visionary. I was a liability. Then came the turning point. A major financial institution was hacked, millions of customer records stolen, panic spreading through the industry. Companies were desperate for solutions. My software was exactly what they needed. Within months, Secure Nova went from struggling startup to industry leader. By the 4th year, we were valued at $15 million. The world had finally noticed me. But my family? They barely blinked. When I married Daniel, a charming marketing executive, they threw a small party. Not for my company's success, but for the fact that I had finally done something they could recognize, gotten married. For once, my mother beamed, my father toasted, and my siblings actually asked me questions. They didn't care about Secure Nova. They cared about the ring on my finger. Of course, that marriage crumbled 3 years later, torn apart by Daniel's betrayals. And when I chose to leave, my family didn't comfort me. They scolded me. Marriage takes work, Amber. Everyone has problems. They cared more about keeping up appearances than about the wounds carved into my trust. But there was one blessing born from that painful chapter. My daughter, Lily. She became my reason, my anchor. And while they saw my single motherhood as another failure, I knew it was the beginning of something far greater. Looking back, that period taught me 2 lessons. First, success doesn't erase loneliness. Second, validation from people who refuse to see you will never arrive. And still, I wasn't done building. Secure Nova expanded, branched into international markets, acquired competitors, and created new product lines. By the time Lily was 4, the company's valuation had soared to $58 million. That's the empire I carried in silence. An empire no one at that Thanksgiving table knew existed. And here's what I want to ask you now. Have you ever had to fight for something while everyone around you doubted you? Drop your story in the comments. I promise you, your voice matters here. Because what came next, the secret financial lifeline I created for my family, was the irony that would one day explode over pumpkin pie and a lace tablecloth. By the time Lily turned 4, my company was no longer a gamble. Secure Nova had become an empire valued at $58 million, with offices in multiple countries and clients that included banks, governments, and tech giants. Every number in my financial reports confirmed what I had always known deep down. I was not the failure my family imagined. I was proof that resilience could rewrite destiny. Yet, strangely, I never told them. Part of me wanted to. There were moments when I'd hover over the send button, ready to share an article about Secure Nova's rapid rise, or an interview where I was praised as one of the youngest female founders to hit such a valuation. But each time, I hesitated. Pride stopped me, but not the kind they would understand. I wanted their respect for who I was, not for the dollar signs attached to my name. Meanwhile, I saw their social media posts. Shiny cars in the driveway, exotic vacations, kitchen remodels with marble countertops. My father smiling beside a Lexus. My mother posting photos of her new jewelry with captions about blessings. Patrick boasting about his promotions. Stephanie sipping wine in Tuscany. At first I wondered how they afforded it. Then I remembered the deposits. 5 years earlier, when my father lost his job during a company downsizing, I learned about it through my mother's hushed phone call. She spoke about bills piling up, the mortgage straining them, the fear of losing everything. Without telling them, I created an account labeled Wilson Family Trust Distribution. Into it, I deposited $5,000 each month for my parents. Later I added $3,000 each for Patrick and Stephanie, after overhearing through my mother how much they were struggling. They never suspected the source. They believed it was some distant family trust or hidden inheritance. They built their new lives on it, lavish, comfortable, entitled. And all the while, they still looked at me as though I was the weakest link. I didn't reveal my role because, deep down, I hoped their kindness toward me might one day come naturally. But it didn't. They continued their subtle digs. My father dismissed my career as that computer thing. My mother pitied me for being a single mom. My siblings nodded in false sympathy, and then bragged about their lifestyles, all of it built on my quiet sacrifice. Still, I poured myself into Lily. She became my universe. On weekends, I would take her to Golden Gate Park, where she chased pigeons and laughed freely, a sound that healed wounds my parents had carved years earlier. At bedtime, I read her stories about strong girls who grew into strong women, whispering promises that she would never feel like an afterthought the way I once had. It wasn't always easy. Being both mother and CEO stretched me to my limits. Some nights I would tuck her in, then retreat to my office, eyes burning from spreadsheets and strategy decks. Yet, every morning, her little arms wrapped around my neck reminded me why I fought so hard. And then came the call. One November morning, as the San Francisco skyline glowed outside my window, my mother's name flashed on my phone. "Amber," she said, her tone clipped. "We'd like you and Lily to join us for Thanksgiving this year. Everyone will be there. It's been too long." I hesitated. It had been nearly 2 years since we'd last gathered. That time ended in criticism and cold stares. My father lectured me about needing a male influence for Lily. My mother lamented how hard life must be in a broken home. I had left with a tight smile, vowing not to repeat the experience. But now she spoke with forced cheer. "It's the holidays, dear. Family should be together. Besides, your father's doing better. We're all doing better. There's much to be thankful for." Her words hung in the air. Doing better. Of course they were, my money had made sure of it. I turned to my best friend Julia for advice. She had known me since Stanford, through ramen nights and investor pitches. Over lattes, she listened to my hesitation. "Honestly?" she said, stirring her cup slowly. "They don't deserve you, but I know you'll want to see if it could be different. Just promise me one thing. Don't let them make you small again." Her words lodged in my chest. So I prepared. I bought thoughtful gifts. A $6,000 watch for my father, diamond earrings for my mother, a golf membership for Patrick, a spa package for Stephanie. For the kids, I chose toys and gaming consoles they'd begged for online. I wanted generosity without revealing my wealth. I wanted peace without pride. Lily twirled in the burgundy velvet dress I bought her, eyes sparkling. "Will Grandpa like my dress?" she asked. My throat tightened as I smiled. "He'll love it, sweetheart." The night before our flight, I stood on my balcony overlooking the city lights, weighing my choice. Tell them the truth about my success? Or let them see only the version of me they'd always known? I chose silence. If reconciliation was possible, I wanted it to be about love, not money. What I didn't realize was that by protecting their pride, I was about to walk straight into a storm of their cruelty. The morning of our flight, San Francisco's sky stretched clear and blue. My driver loaded our luggage into the trunk, and Lily bounced on her toes, velvet dress folded neatly in her small suitcase. To her, this trip was nothing but excitement, a chance to meet cousins, to see snow, to twirl for her grandparents. To me, it was a battlefield waiting behind a front door I once called home. We settled into first-class seats, though I felt uneasy about the indulgence. Lily pressed her face to the window as the city shrank below us. "Mommy," she whispered, "do you think my cousins will like Mr. Whiskers?" She held up her stuffed cat, its fur worn from years of love. "They'll love him," I assured her, smoothing her hair. "And they'll love you." The words tasted hopeful, but inside, my stomach tightened. I had spent weeks preparing for this trip, choosing gifts, rehearsing patience, layering hope over memory. Yet I still feared history would repeat itself. Hours later, as our plane descended into Hartford, I scrolled through old family photos on my phone. There was Lily's first birthday cake smeared across her cheeks, her first steps on the living room rug, The first day of preschool. Backpack almost bigger than her. I had shared these photos with my parents over the years. Most received nothing more than a quick, cute, or sometimes no response at all. They hadn't noticed the milestones. But they never missed noticing the checks. We drove from the airport to my childhood home, and as the car turned into the driveway, I froze. The modest colonial house I remembered had been transformed. A new wing stretched across the side. Fresh landscaping gleamed. A circular driveway displayed two new vehicles, a Mercedes SUV and a Lexus sedan. All of it, every brick, every stone, was financed by my silent generosity. "Is this where you grew up, Mommy?" Lily asked, wide-eyed. "Yes, baby," I said softly, my chest tight. "This is where I lived when I was little." The front door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there, hair freshly colored, outfit unmistakably designer. Her eyes flicked to Lily. "My goodness, she's grown," she said, voice light but distant. No hug, no warmth, just a polite observation before she stepped aside. Inside, the transformation continued. Marble counters, polished wood, artwork that looked more gallery than home. I glanced around, feeling like a stranger in my own memories. My father sat in a leather recliner, glued to a football game. He looked up briefly when I entered. "So, you made it," he said flatly. Then his eyes returned to the screen. Lily pressed closer to me, shy. I guided her toward him. "Dad, this is Lily. Lily, this is your grandpa." He gave her a quick glance. "Hello there," he muttered, before turning back to the game. It wasn't the homecoming I had imagined for her. It wasn't even acknowledgement. Upstairs, my old bedroom had been converted into storage. Boxes crowded the space, and a pull-out sofa bed sagged against the wall. "Is this your room?" Lily asked, peeking around. "It used to be," I said, forcing cheer. "We'll make it cozy." We unpacked, but my heart ached. They had made no effort to welcome us, not even a blanket on the bed. Still, I held on to hope for Lily's sake, if not for mine. Later, relatives began to arrive. Patrick swaggered in, whiskey glass in hand, greeting me with a mocking, "The prodigal daughter returns." His wife smiled thinly. Stephanie swept through the door in designer clothes, her children trailing behind her. She kissed the air near my cheek, eyes sliding over Lily. "So this is your daughter. She looks just like you." The tone made it sound like a flaw. As the hours passed, the digs piled higher. "So, Amber, still doing that computer thing?" my father asked during a commercial break. "Must be hard, raising a kid alone. If only you'd stayed with Daniel." Stephanie chimed in. "Children from broken homes always struggle." Even Thomas, her husband, muttered about statistics proving single mothers raise troubled kids. Each barb landed sharper than the last. I held my composure, but inside, I was unraveling. And here is where I turn to you. Have you ever walked into a room hoping for love, only to be met with judgment instead? If you have, tell me in the comments, share your story. Because no one deserves to carry that kind of silence alone. And if you want to hear how this Thanksgiving spiraled into the moment I finally revealed everything, make sure you subscribe. Trust me, the storm was only beginning. I swallowed the pain that night, but a storm was indeed brewing. Dinner began the way every family holiday should: laughter, chatter, children running underfoot. But in that house, the warmth was only an illusion. What unfolded around the long mahogany table was a performance, carefully staged with crystal glasses and imported silverware. "Everyone, find your seats," my mother announced, carrying in the turkey as though she were a hostess on a television special. I scanned the table and found our names at the very end, farthest from the center where my parents, Patrick and Stephanie, sat in their self-appointed thrones. It wasn't random, it was a reminder. Lily and I were still outsiders. The table glittered beneath a chandelier I didn't recognize. The lace cloth stretched pristine, a centerpiece of flowers so elaborate it looked hired. None of it belonged to the house I remembered. That modest space had been replaced by something extravagant, something I had unknowingly purchased. My father stood and, to my shock, began a prayer. We had never prayed before meals growing up. "Lord, we thank you for this bountiful meal," he said, voice grand. And for blessing the Wilson family with prosperity. He paused, glancing down the table at me. And we pray for those less fortunate. May they find their way to better circumstances through hard work and good choices. The words hit like stones. Around me, Patrick and Stephanie bowed their heads, their spouses nodding solemnly. My mother beamed with pride. I squeezed Lily's small hand under the table. She didn't understand the sting behind the words, but I did. Plates filled quickly, turkey carved, casseroles passed, wine poured. I watched them savor every bite, boasting about the origins of each dish. This turkey is from an organic farm, my mother bragged. $300, but worth every penny. She smiled at my father as if the expense was his gift. My father, who still thought the money came from a mysterious trust. As food traveled around the table, so did their stories. Stephanie leaned forward, diamond bracelet flashing. We just got back from Europe. Tuscany was breathtaking. The villa had views you wouldn't believe, Thomas added. I played golf every morning. Best trip of our lives. Patrick followed quickly. The dealership had its best quarter ever. The owner personally thanked me for my contribution. Promotion to sales director. He raised his glass, soaking in my father's approval. That's our boy, my father said proudly. Always knew you had it in you. I cut Lily's turkey into smaller pieces, listening in silence. No one asked about me. Not once. They passed dishes and compliments around the table, but my existence seemed like an afterthought. Finally my mother turned, as if she'd just remembered. So, Amber, how is that little computer job of yours going? Before I could answer, Stephanie laughed lightly. Mom, she barely has time for work. She's a single mom now. That must be such a struggle. Diana, my brother's wife, chimed in with practiced sympathy. I can't imagine raising Jason without Patrick. Every child needs a father figure. Heat crept up my neck, but I kept my voice even. Actually, my company has expanded internationally. Things are going very well. My father raised an eyebrow, skepticism written across his face. International now, is it? Sounds impressive. But I always thought you'd choose something more traditional. Something stable. My mother cut in before I could respond. Lily seems small for her age. Is she eating enough? Children from broken homes often show delays. Broken home. The phrase lodged in my throat. Lily is perfectly healthy, I said, forcing calm. Her pediatrician is pleased with her growth. Stephanie leaned in. Studies show divorce is traumatic for kids. She's not from a broken home, I said firmly. She has a loving, stable home with me. My father chuckled bitterly. But no father. Every child needs a father. Look how well Patrick and Stephanie turned out. 2 parents make all the difference. Lily looked up at me, wide-eyed, sensing the tension. I squeezed her hand again. Eat your turkey, sweetheart, I whispered, swallowing the lump in my throat. Every jab cut deeper, yet none of them saw the irony. They dined under chandeliers I had bought. They bragged about vacations funded by my deposits. They scolded me about parenting while sipping wine purchased with my silent sacrifice. And I sat at the far end of the table, holding back a storm that had been building for years. Dessert was just being served when it happened. Pumpkin pie, whipped cream piled high, silver forks clinking against crystal plates. For a moment, the noise of laughter and boasting drowned out the tension I carried like armor. Lily reached for her glass of water with tiny, eager hands. Her elbow nudged the stem, and before I could catch it, the glass tipped. Water spilled across the lace tablecloth, spreading like a dark shadow. It dripped off the edges and splattered on the polished floor. Lily gasped, her little face crumpling. "I'm sorry, Mommy," she whispered, panic in her voice. Before I could reassure her, my father's fist slammed onto the table. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Dishes rattled, pie plates jumped. Lily froze, tears welling instantly. "For God's sake," he roared, his face flushed scarlet. "That tablecloth was imported from France. It cost over $1,000. "She's 4 years old," I said sharply, already blotting at the spill with a napkin. "It was an accident." "This," he thundered, stabbing a finger toward Lily, is exactly the problem. No discipline, no respect, just another spoiled child with no proper parenting. Lily sobbed quietly, her small shoulders shaking. I wrapped an arm around her, shielding her from the weight of his rage. Across the table, Stephanie rolled her eyes. Always making excuses, Amber. This is why kids grow up entitled. No boundaries, no consequences. My jaw clenched. She has plenty of boundaries. What she doesn't need is adults screaming at her over spilled water. Silence fell. Every eye turned to me as though I'd just shattered an unspoken law. No one talks back to my father. For a moment, the only sound was Lily's sniffles. Then my father stood, pushing back his chair with a violent scrape. His napkin fell to the floor, forgotten. "Perhaps it's time," he said, voice cold but seething beneath the surface, "that we address the elephant in the room." My stomach tightened. I had lived in this house long enough to know what that meant. He planted his hands on the table, glaring down at me. "We have been patient, Amber. We've watched you make mistake after mistake, throwing away a stable career for that ridiculous startup, abandoning a perfectly good marriage, raising your daughter without a father. And now you sit here, pretending everything is fine, while the rest of us carry the family name with pride." I opened my mouth to speak, but he raised his hand, silencing me like I was still a child. "You always think you're smarter, better than everyone else. Always had to do things your way. And look where it has gotten you, struggling, alone, clinging to fantasies." The words sliced through me, but beneath the sting something stronger stirred. Anger, clarity. I wasn't struggling. I wasn't broken. I wasn't the girl they remembered. I sat straighter, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Where do you think it's gotten me, Dad?" I asked quietly. He scoffed, looking me up and down. "You drive a rental car. You wear plain clothes. You never talk about success or vacations. It's obvious you're barely scraping by." A laugh almost escaped my lips. The irony was suffocating. They sat surrounded by chandeliers, furniture, and food, all bought with money I had given them. Yet still they saw me as the failure. I looked at Lily, her cheeks wet with tears, and realized this couldn't continue. I couldn't let her grow up believing her mother was weak. So I took a breath. My hands stopped trembling, and I prepared to tell them the truth they had never cared enough to ask. "And this is where you'll want to stay with me." Because the next words I spoke shattered the illusion of that household forever. If you think the spill was dramatic, wait until you hear what happened when I revealed the secret behind their so-called prosperity. Don't miss this. Subscribe now, so you're here for the moment everything changed. The storm had only just begun. The silence after my father's tirade was suffocating. Every fork, every glass, every set of eyes pointed in my direction. I could feel Lily trembling beside me, clutching Mr. Whiskers to her chest. My father's face was hard, flushed with anger. But beneath the rage, I saw something else: certainty. He believed every word he had said. He truly thought I was failing. I leaned forward, my voice steady. "You think I'm struggling. You think I've wasted my life. But maybe it's time you finally learn the truth." My father's eyes narrowed. "And what truth would that be?" "The Wilson family trust," I said slowly, letting the words sink in. "The money that has been appearing in your account every month. The deposits that paid for this house expansion. Those cars in the driveway. The vacations you brag about. Have you ever wondered where it really comes from?" Confusion flickered across his face. My mother shifted uneasily in her chair. Patrick and Stephanie exchanged nervous glances. "That money came from your grandfather," my father said, though his tone lacked conviction. "No," I said firmly. "Grandfather never set up any trust. Those payments came from me." The room went still. My mother's fork slipped from her hand, clattering against the china. "From you?" Patrick scoffed, his voice dripping with disbelief. "You expect us to believe you've been sending thousands of dollars every month? With what money?" "With money from my company," I answered calmly. "Secure Nova, the cybersecurity firm I founded after Stanford. The same company now valued at $58 million. Stephanie's laugh was brittle, hollow. "You're lying. If you were that successful, we'd have heard about it. People would be talking." I shook my head. "You never asked. You never cared enough to look. You dismissed me before you even knew who I had become. For a moment, all I saw was shock. My mother's lips parted as though she were trying to speak, but no words came. My father's face drained of color, his mouth opening, closing. Patrick stared, eyes wide. Even Stephanie, usually so quick with a sharp remark, was speechless. Finally, my father slammed his palm flat against the table again. If what you're saying is true, which I doubt, then you've been deceiving us. Pretending to be less than you are. Playing some manipulative game to make us feel small. I met his glare without flinching. I wasn't pretending. I chose not to flaunt my success because I wanted to be valued for who I am, not for my bank account. And I gave you money because I thought I was helping my family, not because I wanted to control you. You've always been selfish, he spat. Always thought you were better than us. Now you want us to believe you're some secret millionaire, pulling strings behind the scenes? My chest ached, but the sadness outweighed the anger. I never looked down on you, I said softly. All I ever wanted was your acceptance, your love. But you never saw me, not once. Stephanie finally spoke, her voice sharp. So what now, Amber? You expect us to bow down and thank you? To grovel at your feet for saving us? No, I said, my hand resting protectively on Lily's back. I expect nothing from you. I've already given more than you ever acknowledged. But I will no longer let you treat me as though I am nothing when the truth is, without me, all of this would never have existed. The silence was crushing. The chandelier above us hummed faintly, the only sound in the room. Then my father's face hardened again. You come into my house, he growled, insult my family, claim you've been our savior, and expect us to thank you? Get out. Take your lies and get out of my house. Lily whimpered, clinging tighter to me. Tears welled in my eyes, but my voice remained calm. They aren't lies, Dad. They're the truth. But you're right about one thing: we will leave. I rose, lifting Lily into my arms. Around the table, no one moved. Some looked shocked, others looked almost satisfied. None stood to stop us. We walked out into the cold November night, dignity the only thing I carried with me. The night air cut against my face as I stepped off the porch. Lily pressed tightly against my shoulder. Her sobs had quieted into hiccups, but the hurt in her small body was heavy in my arms. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Behind me, the house glowed with the warm light of chandeliers, but inside, it was nothing but coldness. The rental car engine hummed as I drove us away. Lily eventually fell asleep, her head leaning against the car seat, clutching Mr. Whiskers with a death grip. I watched her in the rearview mirror, my chest aching. She was too young to understand the storm she had just witnessed, but old enough to carry the sting of her grandfather's words. That thought alone nearly broke me. I checked us into a quiet hotel on the outskirts of Hartford. The receptionist gave me a sympathetic smile as she slid over the room key, but she couldn't possibly know the weight pressing down on me. Upstairs, I laid Lily in bed. She curled into the pillow, still clutching her stuffed cat, and drifted into uneasy sleep. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the heater. I sat in the armchair by the window, staring out at the twinkling city lights. Hours earlier, I had walked into my childhood home carrying gifts, carrying hope. Now, I sat in a sterile hotel room, my heart raw but oddly steady. My phone buzzed. Julia's name lit up the screen. I answered in a whisper. How bad was it? She asked, skipping any greeting. I let out a humorless laugh. About as bad as it could possibly be. My father literally threw us out, told me to get out and never come back. There was silence on the other end. Then Julia exhaled slowly. Amber, I'm so sorry. But I'm not surprised. They've never known how to see you for who you are. I told her everything: the digs, the water spill, the reveal about the trust, my father's final command. By the time I finished, Julia's voice had hardened. They don't deserve you, and they definitely don't deserve Lily. I know, I whispered, looking over at my sleeping daughter. And yet, I kept giving. I gave them over $1 million in the past 5 years, $3,000 every month to Patrick and Stephanie, $5,000 to my parents, almost $3 million in total. For what? For silence? For scorn? The realization stung more than their insults. I had been financing my own humiliation. That night, something inside me broke free. The need for approval that had haunted me since childhood burned away, leaving only clarity. I opened my laptop and logged into my banking portal. There they were, the scheduled transfers that had been leaving my account for years. 5,000, 3,000, 3,000. All set to continue indefinitely. My finger hovered over the cancel button. I thought of my father's roar, my mother's silence, my siblings' smug faces. And I clicked. 1, 2, 3. Just like that, the lifeline was cut. I sat back, exhaling deeply. For the first time in years, my money was truly mine. More importantly, my peace was mine. Julia was quiet on the line. Finally, she said, "So, what now?" I looked back at Lily, her chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Now, I stopped pretending. No more anonymous support. No more hiding my success. And no more chasing people who never wanted my happiness in the first place. And I want to ask you this, have you ever given so much of yourself to people who never gave back? Have you ever kept fighting for approval you would never receive? If you have, leave a comment and share it. Because stories like this aren't just mine. They belong to anyone who's been undervalued, unseen, and unappreciated. Outside the hotel window, the city stretched quietly, but inside me, the storm was over. I wasn't broken. I was free. The next morning, the hotel room was still, the early light creeping through the curtains in pale stripes. Lily was curled beside me, her cheeks flushed from sleep, her tiny fingers tangled in mister. Whiskers worn fur. For a brief moment, there was peace. Then my phone rang. My mother's number. I almost ignored it. But something inside me wanted to hear what excuse she would offer. I swiped to answer. "Amber," she said, her voice pitched high, frantic. "Something's wrong. Your father tried to use his card this morning, and it was declined. We checked the account, the monthly deposit isn't there. Did you do something?" I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. "Yes, Mom, I canceled the transfers." Her gasp was sharp. "But why? After everything we've been through after last night? Surely you understand your father was upset. He didn't mean—" "No," I cut her off, my tone calm but cold. "He meant every word. And so did you, when you sat there in silence while Lily was humiliated." She tried again, her voice shifting from panic to persuasion. "We're family. Families fight. But at the end of the day, we support each other. That money, Amber, we need that money. We have bills, commitments. Your father's pension doesn't cover the life we've built." "The life you've built," I corrected, my words deliberate. "Funded by the daughter you dismissed as a failure. Funded by the granddaughter you couldn't even defend." Her tone hardened, dropping all pretense. "You can't do this to us. After everything we've done for you." I let the silence stretch, my grip tightening around the phone. "Name one thing," I said finally. "One time in the last 10 years you supported me, believed in me, or stood by me. Just one." The silence on her end was deafening. "That's what I thought," I whispered. "Amber, please," she said again, the pleading returning. "Don't punish us. Think of your family." "I am thinking of my family," I said, glancing at Lily as she stirred softly in her sleep. "My family is the little girl lying next to me, the one you allowed to be screamed at, the one you reduced to tears over a tablecloth." Her voice cracked. "So you're really going to leave us with nothing?" "You had everything," I replied. "More than you ever earned, more than you ever appreciated. And you wasted it along with every chance to treat me with respect." I ended the call. Then with a steady hand, I blocked her number. I blocked my father, Patrick, Stephanie. One by one, I severed the cords that had kept me tethered to their conditional love. For years, I had carried the weight of being the unseen child, the underestimated daughter, the overlooked sister. For years, I had poured myself into their comfort while starving for their approval. And now, with a few swipes on my phone, I was free. I set the device down and turned back to Lily. She was waking slowly, her eyes blinking against the light. "Are we going home, Mommy?" she asked softly. I brushed a strand of hair from her face and smiled. "Not just yet, sweetheart. First, we're going somewhere better. Somewhere just for us." Her eyes widened. "Like a vacation?" "Yes," I said, my voice sure. "Like the start of a new life." I had already booked the tickets to Hawaii the night before, my beach house ready, my assistant confirming every detail. This wasn't just an escape, it was a declaration. I no longer owed anyone my silence, my money, or my submission. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. And most importantly, I was choosing her. The flight to Hawaii felt like a rebirth. Lily sat beside me, her small legs swinging from the seat, her face pressed to the window as endless blue stretched below us. "Is all of that the ocean, Mommy?" she asked, her eyes wide with wonder. "Yes, baby," I whispered, kissing the top of her head. "That's the ocean. And we're flying toward our new beginning." When we landed, the warm air wrapped around us like an embrace. Palm trees swayed, and the scent of salt water drifted through the breeze. As we drove to the house I had quietly purchased years earlier, a beachfront property with wide windows and a wraparound deck, I felt something I hadn't in decades. Peace. Lily ran inside first, her shoes tapping across polished wood floors. She squealed when she found the glass doors leading to the patio, rushing outside to see the waves lapping against golden sand. "Mommy, it's like a dream!" I smiled, tears stinging my eyes. "It's our dream, sweetheart. Just ours." We spent that first evening barefoot on the beach, building sandcastles until the sun melted into the horizon. As stars blanketed the sky, Lily leaned against me, her voice sleepy. "Do we get to stay here forever?" "Yes," I said, wrapping my arm around her. "Forever. Forever." In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt my life from the ground up. Mornings began with coffee on the deck, the ocean stretching endless before me. Lily attended a small local school where teachers praised her curiosity and kindness. For the first time, she was surrounded by encouragement instead of criticism. And for the first time, so was I. I poured energy not just into Secure Nova, but into something new. The Thanksgiving debacle had left me with a fire burning inside. I didn't want anyone else, especially any child, to feel unseen the way I had. Out of that conviction, Lily's Light Foundation was born. Our mission was simple but powerful: to provide scholarships and mentorship for children from single-parent households, proving that circumstances don't define potential. I named it after her because she was the light that had pulled me from the shadows. When the foundation launched, the first fundraiser exceeded every expectation. We raised over $2 million in a single night, with tech leaders, philanthropists, and even celebrities pledging support. I stood on that stage in a simple black dress, looking out at hundreds of faces, and spoke from the rawest part of my soul. I was once told I was nothing, that without the right family structure, without approval, without validation, I would fail. But what they didn't know was that sometimes being unseen makes you unstoppable. And every child deserves the chance to prove that truth. The applause that followed felt like healing, not because of the recognition, but because Lily was in the front row, clapping with all her might, her little voice shouting, "That's my mom!" At home, we built routines filled with joy. Saturday mornings meant pancakes and ocean swims. Evenings meant movie nights. Lily curled against me under a blanket. Slowly, the wounds of Connecticut faded, replaced by salt air and laughter. Still, sometimes, in quiet moments, I thought of my parents, of my siblings. I wondered if the money running dry had forced them to confront reality. I wondered if they regretted the words that had driven us away. But I never reached out. For once, I chose silence as protection, not as sacrifice. One night, watching Lily asleep in her new room painted pale yellow, I whispered a promise. "You will never beg for love. You will never wonder if you're enough, because you already are." That was the gift I had taken from pain and reshaped into strength. I had lost a family, but I had built a future. 3 months passed in Hawaii, each day smoothing the rough edges of my heart. Secure Nova thrived even from a distance. The foundation gained momentum, and Lily blossomed in ways I had only dreamed she could. For once, life was mine to shape. Then the letters began. The first arrived in a plain white envelope with my father's familiar handwriting on the front. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. Inside, his words bled with bitterness. "You've embarrassed this family with your lies. We built our home, our lives, through hard work, not from your manipulative games. Canceling those transfers proves you never cared about us. You're selfish, Amber. And one day, Lily will see the truth about you too." My hands shook as I read, not with sadness but with a strange clarity. This wasn't love. This wasn't family. It was entitlement, dressed as outrage. 2 weeks later, another letter came. This time from Stephanie. Her script was elegant, the venom underneath sharp. "How could you abandon us after everything we've done for you? We protected you from yourself, from your reckless choices. You think money makes you powerful? It doesn't. It makes you pathetic. No one respects a woman who hides behind her bank account." I set the letter down and laughed, the sound bitter. Protected me? They had done nothing but tear me down. Patrick's letter came next. Short. Cruel. "Enjoy your fake paradise. Real family always finds a way back together. You'll regret this." Every word was a blade meant to pierce my resolve. But instead of bleeding, I felt stronger. Their attempts to guilt me only confirmed what I already knew. Without the money, they had nothing left to offer me. Their letters weren't bridges, they were chains, desperate grabs to pull me back into submission. I didn't respond. Not to one of them. Instead, I locked the letters in a box on my desk, a reminder of what I had escaped. But late at night, when the waves hushed against the shore, and Lily slept soundly in the next room, I would read them again. Not to torture myself, but to strengthen my resolve. Each word was proof that the love I had sought for decades had never existed. Julia called one evening after I shared the letters with her. "Amber," she said firmly, "this isn't love, this is control. They're angry because they lost their grip on you. Don't let those words back into your heart." "I won't," I promised. And I meant it. Yet the irony of it all still struck me. The same family who had lived off my silent generosity now painted me as the villain. They wanted the money but despised the woman who provided it. Lily never saw the letters. I refused to let their poison touch her innocence. Instead, I poured my energy into building memories with her, teaching her to surf, baking banana bread, planting hibiscus in our garden. She didn't need to know the storm I had walked away from, but deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Families like mine don't surrender control easily. They would try again. They would find new ways to reach me. And they did. Before I tell you what happened when they tried to drag me back into their chaos with something far more dangerous than letters, I want you to think about this. Have you ever cut someone off, only for them to claw back into your life with even sharper claws? Share your experience in the comments and make sure you stay with me. The next twist is one you will not see coming. The letters were just the beginning of their retaliation. It started quietly, like whispers on the wind. A friend from San Francisco called one morning, her voice tense. "Amber, have you seen the posts?" I hadn't. But within minutes, I was staring at my phone in disbelief. Stephanie had gone public, her words venom disguised as concern. It breaks my heart to watch my sister abandon her family. She's become cold, obsessed with money. She cut off support when we needed her most, and now she hides in paradise while the rest of us struggle. Money can't replace family. The comments flooded in. Old acquaintances, distant relatives, even strangers weighed in. Some offered sympathy to her, others threw daggers at me. Words like selfish, cruel, greedy. Patrick followed next, his post blunt and scathing. "Amber thinks money makes her better than us. She flaunts her wealth while her family suffers. That's not success, it's betrayal." Then came the worst. My father sat for an interview with a local paper. His face, stern and wounded, stared back from the headline. "Daughter turns back on family who raised her." In the article, he painted me as an ingrate, a daughter who had forgotten her roots and let success poison her. He even dragged Lily into it, questioning if a child raised without a father could ever truly thrive. I felt sick. My hands shook as I read, fury and grief clashing inside me. Julia came over that evening, pacing my living room as I laid the articles across the table. "They're trying to destroy you," she said, her eyes blazing. "They can't control you anymore, so they're rewriting the story. If they can't have your money, they'll take your reputation." And it worked, at least for a while. Reporters began reaching out, emails and calls piling up. Anonymous messages filled my inbox, some accusing, some demanding answers, some vile beyond words. I could have hidden. I could have stayed silent, let the storm rage. But as I watched Lily play on the beach that evening, her laughter rising above the waves, I realized silence was no longer an option. The next day, I scheduled an interview. Not with a gossip magazine, not with a local paper. With a respected national journalist known for uncovering the truth. When the cameras rolled, I spoke with a calm I didn't know I possessed. For years, I supported my family financially, millions of dollars they never earned. Money they believed came from a mysterious trust. When I revealed the truth, instead of gratitude, I was met with hostility. They've chosen to rewrite history because it's easier than admitting their comfort was built on my sacrifice. But let me be clear. My success isn't a betrayal. My silence was. I told the story not to humiliate them, but to reclaim my narrative. I spoke about building Secure Nova from scratch, about the sacrifices, about Lily's role as my anchor. And then I spoke about boundaries. About the importance of refusing to let even family chain you to toxicity. The interview went viral. Headlines shifted. Comments poured in different this time. "She's inspiring. She's brave. She's proof you don't need validation to succeed." But the best comment came from an unexpected source. That night, Lily curled into my lap, her eyes sleepy but earnest. "Mommy," she said softly, "I'm glad you told the truth. I like our family the way at Island, just us." Tears slipped down my cheeks as I kissed her hair. She didn't need chandeliers or imported tablecloths. She needed honesty, stability, love. And those were things I could give her in abundance. I had faced their smear campaign, and instead of breaking, I had built something stronger. But the fight wasn't finished. Because once you shine a light on lies, the people who live in shadows don't just fade away. They lash out harder. And that's exactly what they did. The smear campaign wasn't their final strike. When public sympathy began to shift toward me after the interview, my family escalated. This time, they came armed with lawyers. A thick envelope arrived at my Hawaii home one humid morning. Inside was a summons. My parents, Patrick and Stephanie, were suing me for fraudulent misrepresentation and withholding rightful inheritance. According to the lawsuit, the so-called Wilson Family Trust was intended for them, and I had stolen it. I sat at the kitchen table, the papers spread before me, my hands trembling not with fear but with disbelief. They weren't just attacking my name now, they were trying to dismantle everything I had built. Julia flew in the next day, storming into my house with her laptop under her arm. "Amber, this is baseless," she said, skimming the documents. "There never was a trust. You created those accounts yourself. They're grasping at straws. Straws that could drag us into court," I murmured, glancing toward Lily's room. The thought of her watching me battle her grandparents in a courtroom was unbearable. But I wasn't powerless. Secure Nova had given me more than wealth. It had given me connections. Within 48 hours, I had assembled a legal team of the sharpest attorneys in San Francisco. We met via video call, their voices steady, their strategy clear. "They can't win," my lead attorney assured me. "There is no trust deed, no legal document tying those funds to anyone but you. You deposited the money voluntarily. We'll countersue for defamation and harassment." Still, the headlines exploded. Tech CEO sued by own family. Paparazzi hounded me at the beach, cameras flashing as Lily clung to my hand. One night, after tucking her into bed, I stood on the balcony, staring at the endless Pacific. For years, I had hidden my success to avoid conflict. Now the world knew and my own family was dragging me through mud. The temptation to crumble was strong. But then I remembered Lily's words. I like our family the way at Island, just us. The trial date came. In the polished wood courtroom, my parents sat stiffly across from me, Patrick and Stephanie at their sides. They looked righteous, as if justice were theirs to claim. My father glared at me like I was a stranger. The judge asked for opening statements. Their lawyer painted me as a manipulator who had tricked them into dependence, then cruelly cut them off. He spoke of betrayal, family duty, broken promises. My attorney stood next, voice calm but cutting. This case is built on entitlement, not evidence. The defendants, Amber Wilson's own family, benefited from her generosity for years. She gave without obligation. And when she chose to stop, they retaliated with lies. Evidence followed. Bank records showing transfers from my personal account. Emails between me and my financial advisor, confirming I had set up the distributions. Not a single shred of proof that a trust existed. Then came my testimony. I spoke clearly, voice steady though my heart pounded. I gave because I thought it would help. I gave because I wanted love. But when the money stopped, so did the illusion. This isn't about inheritance, this is about control. For a moment, the courtroom was silent. My father shifted uncomfortably. Stephanie looked down at her hands. The judge leaned forward, expression unreadable. Without documented evidence of a trust, the plaintiffs have no legal claim. Case dismissed. The gavel fell. Just like that, the chains were severed. Outside, reporters swarmed. Microphones thrust toward my face. Amber, how do you feel about your family suing you? I paused, choosing my words carefully. I feel free. Because sometimes the greatest betrayal isn't losing family, it's realizing they were never truly yours. And sometimes, freedom is worth the fight. That night, back in Hawaii, Julia and I sat on the deck with glasses of wine, the ocean whispering below. You know they won't stop, she warned. I know, I admitted, but neither will I. And before I tell you about the final moment, the one where everything came full circle, you need to hear this. Have you ever had to stand in court, or in life, against people who were supposed to protect you? Drop your story in the comments. Because when we share our battles, we take back the power together. The lawsuit was over. But the final reckoning was still ahead. The lawsuit had ended, but the echoes of it lingered. For weeks after, I felt like I was still standing in that courtroom. My father's glare etched into my mind, my mother's silence ringing louder than any accusation. Yet, life didn't stop to let me dwell. Life had a way of nudging me forward, even when my past clawed at me. By the time the next Thanksgiving approached, a year had passed since the night everything exploded. A year since I walked out of my parents' house with Lily in my arms, into the cold November night, free but broken. Now, here I was standing on the lanai of my Hawaiian beach house, the scent of plumeria drifting through the warm air, watching Lily chase waves under the golden Sunday. This year, the table would be different. There would be no crystal chandeliers casting judgmental shadows, no $1,000 turkeys cooked to impress. Instead, I had prepared a simple, beautiful meal, with the people who had chosen to love us without condition. Julia was there, her laughter as steady as her loyalty. Christopher, who had quietly shifted from business partner to something much deeper, was at my side, steady and kind. Maria, our nanny, had brought her family. Even Rachel, my cousin, came with her children, proving that not all ties of blood were poisoned. And then, my parents arrived. Tentative, humble. My father looked older, thinner, as though the weight of his anger had finally worn him down. My mother's eyes were wet even before she hugged me. Therapy had been brutal, forcing them to face truths they had buried for decades. I had set strict boundaries. No manipulation, no entitlement, no undermining me in front of Lily. They had respected those boundaries for months, showing small but steady signs of change. The meal began. The ocean breeze swept across the table where simple dishes, grilled fish, roasted vegetables, fresh tropical fruits replaced the ostentation of the past. Lily sat beside Christopher, giggling as he pretended to steal mango slices from her plate. Julia poured wine, and Rachel's children ran barefoot across the sand, their laughter filling the air. I raised my glass. "Before we eat, I want to share something I've learned this past year," I said, my voice strong but calm. Everyone turned toward me, even my father, who for once wasn't bristling with impatience. Family is not about blood alone. Family is about respect, about acceptance, about unconditional love. Sometimes we find that with the people who raised us. Other times, we create it with those who choose to stand beside us. Tonight, I am grateful for both. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then Lily, never one to let things get too heavy, piped up. "Can we eat now? Grandpa promised to help me build the biggest sandcastle after dinner." Laughter rippled around the table, breaking the tension in the sweetest way. Even my father chuckled, a sound I hadn't heard in years. That night, as the waves lapped softly against the shore and the moon rose over the horizon, I walked alone along the beach. The sand was cool beneath my feet, the water silvered by the moonlight. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. The empire I had built, 58 million and growing, was impressive. But the real empire was this: the freedom to define my own worth, the courage to walk away from those who harmed me, and the strength to rebuild a family grounded in love, not obligation. I paused, looking back at the glow of my home, where laughter still drifted through the open windows. Lily was inside, safe and happy. My friends, my chosen family, were there too. I realized something then. My story wasn't one of loss, it was one of reclamation. And maybe, just maybe, my parents could one day be part of this new family, if they continued to earn it. But whether they did or not, I was no longer chained by their approval. I turned back to the ocean, the salt air filling my lungs. "Freedom," I whispered. "That's the real inheritance. And if you've stayed with me until now, here's my last thought for you. What would you sacrifice to protect your freedom? And who would you call family if blood ties failed you?" Share your thoughts in the comments, because your voice might give strength to someone who feels alone in their own battle. And when you're ready, watch the next story I've prepared. It might just open your eyes to another side of what family truly means. The house was quiet after everyone left. Only the sound of the waves remained, rolling endlessly against the shore, steady and sure. I walked through the empty dining space, the table still cluttered with plates and glasses, the air heavy with the scent of grilled fish and tropical fruit. But instead of exhaustion, I felt something deeper. I felt peace. I peeked into Lily's room. She was curled up in her bed, one arm wrapped tightly around Mr. Whiskers, the other hand still dusted with sand from the castle she had built earlier. Her soft breathing reminded me of everything I had fought for: her innocence, her laughter, her chance to grow up in a home free of judgment. That alone made every storm worth it. I sat out on the deck with a blanket, watching the stars scatter across the Hawaiian sky. For years, I believed I had to earn love by giving money, time, sacrifice. Tonight proved otherwise. Real love doesn't demand proof. Real family doesn't measure your worth against outdated expectations. Real strength is choosing freedom over chains, even when those chains are wrapped in the word family. The pain of the past will never fully disappear. My father's roar at that Thanksgiving table, my mother's silence, my siblings' smirks, those scars are part of me, but scars do not weaken. They remind us that we survived, that we healed. As I closed my eyes, I whispered a promise to myself and to Lily. We will build a life not of fear, not of debt, but of truth. And in that truth, we will always be free. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. And sometimes, that is the only way to truly come home.